You are welcome to today's video lesson with Bright Edo. In today's lesson, I'll be discussing a very important aspect of biology, and it is simply called microorganism. Now, it must be noted that the word microorganism is divided into two words. Now, what are the words? The first of them is micro, while the other is organism. This must be noted. So, looking at micro simply mean very small, whereby organism simply mean living. So, bringing these two words together, we simply say a microorganism is a very small living organism. And this set of organisms, they cannot be seen with the naked eyes. So we can as well say that microorganisms that are very living organisms now are microscopic organisms. They are microscopic organisms. This must be noted. Okay, they are microscopic because we can't see them with our naked eyes. So what do we use to view microorganism? This is done by an instrument called the microscope. So now microscope is used to view microorganisms. So this must be noted about microorganisms. Now moving further, we have various categories of microorganisms, and we have the likes of bacterials. Bacteria is a good example of a microorganism. We have the likes of algae. Okay, this is another example of microorganism. We have the likes of the protozoas. This is a good example of a microorganism. And also we have fungi. Okay, all of these are good examples of microorganisms. And lastly, we have viruses. So in the course of today's class, I'll be discussing them one after the other. Let us quickly talk about bacterials. Okay, so let us quickly talk about bacterials as a microorganism. Now, this must be noted about bacterials. Now, it must be noted that bacterial as a microorganism is unicellular in nature. Bacterials, they are unicellular in nature. Now, since bacterials are unicellular, it means they contain just a single cell. So bacterials, they are single-celled organisms. Bacterials are single-celled organisms. And also, it must be noted that bacteria, they are unicellular. Also, they are prokaryotic in nature. Bacteria, they are prokaryotic in nature, meaning that they don't have a well-developed nuclear membrane, okay? They don't have the membranous bounded organelles, okay? So that is what it means for these bacteria as a microorganism to be prokaryotic in nature. Now, it must be noted that the bacteria, it has cell wall, and this cell wall of bacteria impact the characteristic shape. So it means that it is a type of cell wall this particular bacteria have that determines the shape of the bacteria, because we have various shapes of bacteria. Bacteria exist in various shapes and forms. So this brings us to talk about the shapes of bacterials. Shapes of bacterials. Now, the first one I'll be discussing in this video lesson is a bacteria with a spherical shape. Bacteria with a spherical shape, that means it will look something like this. So a bacteria with a spherical shape, it has a name and it's called a cocci bacterial. A bacteria with a spherical shape is called a cocci bacterial. Now, moving further, on cocci, we have various classes of cocci. Now, this must be noted. These cocci bacteria that adhere to form long chain. You can see this spherical shaped bacteria. It has a spherical shape. So this cocci bacteria that adhere to form long chain basically has a name, and it's simply called a streptococci bacterial. This is called a streptococci bacterial. Now, moving further, same cocci that adhere to form clusters, cocci in clusters. This is simply called a staphylococci bacterial. Okay, we have various forms of the spherical shaped bacteria, which is the cocci bacterial. Now, moving further, bacteria that exist in four. Bacteria that exists in four, that's the cocci bacteria that exists in four, a tetrad. We have various forms of the cocci bacteria. Now, moving further, same cocci bacteria that forms six or cubic form, we simply say this bacteria is called a Sarcina bacterial. So you can see we have various forms of the spherical shaped bacteria. We have the likes of the streptococci bacterial, the staphylococci bacterial, the Sarcina, the tetrad. Okay, we have various forms of the cocci bacteria. We have other shapes of bacteria, like for example, a bacteria with a rod-like shape. Okay, a bacteria with a rod-like shape. This type of bacteria, we call it a bacilli bacteria, bacilli bacterial. Okay, moving further, we have other bacteria like a bacteria with a comma shape. Okay, bacteria with a comma shape. This is called a vibrobacterial. On this, the bacteria will look like this. Okay, bacteria with a rod-like shape. While a bacteria with a comma shape will look like this. Okay, we have various shapes of bacteria. We have the bacteria with a twisted shape. That's called a spirale bacteria. So we have various shapes of bacteria. And remember, what impact the characteristic shape of a bacteria is simply called the cell wall. And also, it must be noted that the cell wall of a bacteria is made up of, the cell wall of a bacteria is made up of a carbohydrate and a proteinous substance called peptidoglycan. Okay, the cell wall of bacteria is made up of what we call peptidoglycan, which contains two sets of class of food. And the first here is peptido, which means proteins, because it must be noted that the bonds that holds proteins together is called peptide bond. Well, for the glycan part of this cell wall component is the carbohydrate part. That is why we are saying that the cell wall of this bacteria is made up of peptidoglycan containing proteins and carbohydrates. And remember, the smallest unit of a protein molecule is basically called amino acid, while the smallest unit of carbohydrate is sugar. So you can see how the concept of bacteria as a microorganism works. First, we discussed that bacteria, they are unicellular, and also they are prokaryotic in nature, and it is the cell wall that determines the type of shape a bacteria we have. And also, we talked about the cell wall of bacteria, and the cell wall of bacteria basically it's made up of what we call peptidoglycan containing protein and carbohydrate. So with this, let's talk about the next microorganism, which is called algae. Now, moving over to the next microorganism, which is called algae. Now, this must be noted about algae. It must be noted that algae are mainly plants. Algae are mainly plants, and these algae specifically can be unicellular, okay, and also algae can be multicellular. Algae can be unicellular and also algae can be multicellular. So on this note, I said earlier that algae are plant-like. Okay, they are mainly plants, so they are plant-like. Since algae are plant-like, it means they have a cell wall. Yes, since algae they are plant-like, it means they will have what? Cell wall. Not only cell wall, they will have a very important features of plant called the chlorophyll. Okay, they will have a very important feature of plant called the chlorophyll pigment, and we have various types of the chlorophyll pigment up to chlorophyll A to chlorophyll E. Now, on this note, it must be noted that the chlorophyll is found in one part of the cell called the chloroplast. Okay, chlorophyll is found in the chloroplast, and it must be noted that the chloroplast is the kitchen house of a cell, because the chlorophyll is the part of the cell that is responsible for the production of food. This is called photosynthesis. You know, photosynthesis is the process whereby green plant is able to produce their own food, okay, with the help of sunlight and this pigment called chlorophyll. And now you are seeing that this chlorophyll pigment is found where? In the chloroplast. But we have a very special algae called the blue-green algae. This algae specifically called the blue-green algae, and the blue-green algae can also be regarded to be called cyanobacterial. The blue-green algae can also be called cyanobacterial. This blue-green algae, which is from this family now, basically contains the chlorophyll pigment. It contains the chlorophyll pigment, but this chlorophyll is not found in the chloroplast. But now, where is this chlorophyll found? It is found in the cytoplasm. This must be noted. The chlorophyll now of blue-green algae, also called cyanobacterial, is not found in the chloroplast of normal plants, but now it is found where? In the cytoplasm. It must be noted that blue-green algae belongs to a kingdom called the kingdom Monera, alongside with bacterials. And also for blue-green algae, they are also prokaryotic in nature. They are prokaryotic in nature. This must be noted about blue-green algae. They are prokaryotic in nature. Remember, I said for an organism to be prokaryotic, it means that organism doesn't have a well-defined structure, membranous bounded structures. Okay, now on this note about blue-green algae, we have various examples of the blue-green algae and the likes of nostoc, anabena, and oscillatoria. Okay, we have the likes of nostoc. All of these are good examples of the blue-green algae. We have likes of anabena and oscillatoria. So all of these examples are good examples of the blue-green algae. So on algae, you can see now generally they can be unicellular or multicellular, and they are plant-like, containing the cell wall and having chlorophyll pigment, which is found in the chloroplast for a normal plant. But for this blue-green algae that is not completely a plant, it is not a plant. Why? Because plants generally, they are eukaryotic in nature, but this is prokaryotic. Plants, they are eukaryotic in nature, and this is prokaryotic, which is the blue-green algae. That is why they can be classified as a plant. So I believe the concept of all this is clear now. Now on this note, looking at this plant which can now produce its own food, plant now, they will be autotrophic. They will be autotrophic because they have the ability to produce their own food. They will be autotrophic. So on this, all this must be noted about the algae as a microorganism. Okay, we are just being generalistic here, but we have a lot of information about each of these algae. But this is something that must be noted on algae, the general properties and features of algae. Now on this, let's quickly go over to the next, called protozoa. So the microorganisms called the protozoas. Now moving over to the next category of microorganism, we'll be talking about the protozoas. Now this must be noted about protozoas. It must be noted that protozoas, they are animal-like. They are animal-like. Remember, for algae, they are plant-like. But now protozoas are animal-like. This must be noted. So since they are animal-like, will they have cell wall? No, they don't have cell wall. They basically have the cell membrane, and also they have no cell wall. So remember, for you to be called a plant, you basically have the pigment called the chlorophyll pigment, because plants have the ability to produce their own food. That's why they are autotrophic in nature. So here you don't have cell for the plant cell, so also plant cell lacks chlorophyll. So here, no chlorophyll. On this note, we simply go over to another characteristics. Since they don't have chlorophyll, they cannot produce their own food. Hence, they are regarded to be called heterotrophs. Heterotrophs. So they are heterotrophic in nature, whereby plants are autotrophic in nature. So all this must be noted about this set of organisms. And we have various examples of protozoas, like the likes of amoeba, okay, like the likes of paramecium. Okay, now moving over to this set of microorganisms called algae, we have various examples like the likes of Spirogyra. Spirogyra is an algae, and it is a green algae. It is a green filamentous algae, to be specific. Spirogyra is a good example of an algae, but specifically is what? A green algae. And this Spirogyra, since it's a green algae, it belongs to a division called the chlorophyta. Take note, for Spirogera, it belongs to a division called chlorophyta. All of these are under the plant divisions, and plants, they can be of two types. We have the vascular plant and the non-vascular plant. For the vascular plant, they're also called the trachophytes, while for the non-vascular plant, they are also regarded to be called the atrachophytes, and like that. But all these are the general features of this set of microorganisms. Now, moving over to the next, which is called fungi. This must be noted about fungi. Now, it must be noted that fungi can be unicellular also, and also they can be multicellular. Fungi, they can be unicellular, and also they can be multicellular. And we have examples of unicellular fungi. This organism called yeast is a good example of a unicellular fungi, where most other fungi are multicellular. Now, on this note, it means for the fungi as a microorganism, they are non-chlorophyllous. Yes, they are non-chlorophyllous plants. So they are plants, but they don't have chlorophyll. And also, they possess no roots, okay? No roots, stems, and leaves. For this same group of microorganism called the fungi. Okay, they possess no root, stems, and leaf, and also they are saprophytic. Okay, they are saprophytic in nature. For a particular organism to be saprophytic, it means that organism feeds on dead, decay matters. This must be noted. And the structure that this set of fungi uses to feed on dead decay matter is called the rhizoid. This must be noted. Okay, the structure they use to feed on dead decay matter is called the rhizoid. Okay, remember I said for this set of organisms called fungi to be saprophytic, it means they feed on dead decay matters. So all this must be noted about the fungi as a group of microorganisms. Now, moving over to more features of fungi, we have various examples also. I've given one example of a fungi, and it's called yeast. Yeast is a unicellular fungi. This must be noted. For a particular organism to be unicellular, it means it will contain what type of cell? Single cell. But a particular organism to be multicellular, it means it has what? Many cells. And examples of other fungi are the black bread molds. The black bread molds. This must be noted. The black bread molds, whereby these black bread molds, we have a good example of it, and it's called the rhizopus. And we have various species of rhizopus. We have others like the penicillium. All of these are examples of fungi. We have the likes of mushroom. So let us quickly move over to the last aspect of this video, and I'll be talking about viruses. This must be noted. Now let us quickly move over to the last aspect of this video, talking about viruses. Now this must be noted. Viruses are not living, but they are simply packets of hereditary materials wrapped in a coat of proteins. Now actually, viruses can be living, and also they can be non-living. Now, this is what I mean. Viruses can be living, and also they can be non-living. They are non-living when they are found outside the host. So that particular instant when the virus is found outside the host, the virus will be non-living. So it cannot cause harm, making that virus to crystallize. But when this virus is found inside a host, it becomes living, causing harm to that particular host. So when that virus is found outside the host, we don't call it virus again, but basically it's called a virion. So this must be noted. Okay, when the virus is found outside the host, it will form crystals. It will crystallize. So this must be noted about viruses. And it must be noted that viruses contain DNA or RNA strand. Viruses contain DNA or RNA strand, meaning that we have the DNA virus or RNA virus, not both nucleic acids found in the virus. Okay, if it was both of them found, here would have been and DNA and RNA strand, but here is DNA or RNA strand, because this is very, very important. We have DNA virus and also we have RNA virus. And we have various examples of viruses like the likes of a virus that affects a bacterial. A virus that affect a bacterial. This virus is called a bacteriophage. Viruses that affect bacterial is called a bacteriophage. Whereby the next we have viruses that affect fungi. Viruses that affect fungi, we call them mycophage. Viruses that affect fungi is called a mycophage. And lastly, viruses that affect viruses, they are called virophage. Okay, viruses that affect viruses are called virophage. So all this must be noted about virus. So if you are not asked what are examples of virus, bacteriophage is one, mycophage is one, or the virophage is another. Even the HIV is an example of a virus, and even the coronavirus is an example of a virus. So all of these are examples of viruses: the bacteriophage, the mycophage, the virophage, HIV, the coronavirus. Okay, so you can see all the basic features and characteristics of this set of microorganisms. So if you find this video helpful, do well to click the subscribe button to this video and also share these videos to your friend so you don't miss out with the next video to be posted. Thank you very much and God bless you all.